Hello everyone, hope you're having a wonderful day. What holds a home together when the storm hits and the roof starts to leak, plans changing, dinner at risk, and a little girl guarding a drawing with strong black legs? Today we follow Diep, James and Nye as a simple meal turns into a quiet test of love, where a CEO becomes a cook, a leak moves the table, and a promise still stands. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next videos. Rain needles the old tin roof and asks a simple question. What holds a home together when the sky won't? Smoke lifts slow from a damp fire. Uncle James kneels, coaxing the stubborn kindling like it's a shy child. Let it burn gradually, he says, voice low, calm. The room answers with pops and small sighs as the wet wood finds courage. Beside him, Nye is hunched over paper, colouring a chicken with bright black legs. The pencil leaves bold strokes. She hums. The sound steadies the air. 11 points, James grins when she holds it up. He pretends to inspect, then taps the blackened legs. Extra point for strong legs. Laughter moves through the room like heat. She pours him sweet water without being asked. Cup to hand, little ritual, little proof. Is the new house beautiful? He asks. The rain shifts, harder. Do you want to live there with Ms. Diep? Nye nods so fast the chair squeaks. 1 or 2 days first, she says, serious about trial periods in a way only children are. Then forever. House of mine and Ms. Diep's, he answers, a promise spoken plain. The words land and sit there, warm as the chair's wooden arm. The fire gives a soft crackle as if agreeing. Plan for the evening was simple. Catch a chicken before they nest too high, clean the last pile of rubbish, roast, eat together. He pointed to the corners, firewood here, stove there. You go home and handle the chickens first, he told Diep earlier, the leadership in his tone softened by the love in his eyes. I'll finish cleaning. Nye stays with me. She nodded without fuss. That's the trust, not loud, quiet and sure. Dinner together, she said, a promise binding. Rain comes heavier and scrapes the plan thin. The rubbish smokes and sulks. The chicken coop will be slick. The yard becomes a patchwork of small mirrors. He shifts, rethinks, from CEO to cook to fixer to father figure. The roles keep switching, but the center holds. He feels it like a new muscle waking up. Rest a bit, he tells Nye. I'll keep working. He sits close enough to feel the warmth from the small flame, far enough that her drawing space stays clear. She leans in and adds a second line under the chicken's eye. A tear or a shadow, he can't tell. The legs stay bold and black. From CEO to a multi-skilled person, he murmurs, half to her, half to the tin roof. The confession surprises him with its own honesty. It isn't complaint, it's a measure. Luxury to labor, but the meaning runs the other way. Labor to love. It feels right in his mouth. I'm still new at this, he thinks, but her face makes it easier. He clears the next corner. The wet cardboard resists and then gives. He stacks it against the wall in even lines, because order is a kindness. The wind shifts and sprays a fine mist through the doorway. He pulls the door to and listens to the rain soften from hammering to steady drumming. He imagines Diep in another room, wrestling with a slippery bird and laughing at herself when it wins the first round. If I show up tomorrow, what door actually opens? He checks the time. The chicken will be easier to catch once the coop goes quiet. He imagines the soft shuffle of feathers and the way patience is sometimes the only skill that matters. He watches Nye shade the ground beneath the chicken, then goes back over the legs, darker still. "Why black?" he asks. "So it won't fall," she says, "so it can run to us fast." The answer sits in his chest. A small rearrangement. That's the thing about kids. They hand you a map with 2 streets and 1 destination, and it's somehow perfect. He lifts the pot lid and watches steam curl, all thin and delicate like writing in the air. The first sweetness of roast spices answers back. He checks the salt with a pinch to tongue, close. He adds almost nothing. Restraint can be care too. Tomorrow needs a list. Bed, wardrobe, kitchen partition, maybe tiles to stop the winter cold from crawling up their feet. He says it out loud to mark the future, with sound. "We'll finish cleaning tomorrow. Buy a bed, a wardrobe, build the kitchen partition. I'll call a tiler." Nye nods as if her vote will tip the budget. "I drew a lot today," she reports. Another ritual. The day's inventory. Ms. Diep will like it. She will. He believes it. He can hear Diep's laugh already, see the way she will touch the corner of the paper with a thumb to smudge the pencil just a little, and say it looks like the wind is moving. Rain ratchets down again, harder, then eases. The fire holds. He leans closer. The warmth finds his knees. He focuses on breath for a full minute. In, out. The house answers with small sounds, a drip, a settling plank, a distant dog's bark. Simple orchestra. It calms the part of him that still counts schedules for a living. I'm still sick, but she can't feel it. He smiles at the stray thought and lets it fade. The cup is empty. He reaches for the jug and pours. The sweet water catches a reflection of the fire and wobbles with orange. "Will the chicken be scared?" Nye asks. "Only at first," he says. "We'll be gentle." He stands and tests the floorboards. Solid enough. He opens the door and watches the yard breathe. The rain has washed the dust into clean lines. He looks toward the path where Diep will appear. A figure under rain. A bird settled in her arms. Or empty-handed and laughing at the chase. Both pictures are good. He turns back and finds the drawing again. The legs, so black, so sure. He slides the paper to the center of the table like a plate at a feast. That's the plant. He doesn't know he's doing it. He only feels the rightness. Some things belong in the middle. "If the storm keeps us inside, we roast what we can," he says. "And if it clears, we eat under the roof and listen to the rain anyway. What if the roof leaks?" He looks up. A bead gathers at one seam, swells, then refuses to fall. Then we move the table 2 steps. We don't stop eating. The room warms on the strength of that logic. Simple, but it works. He checks the fire again, steady now. He opens the door once more and hears the difference. The rain has moved from anger to conversation. The coop will be quiet soon. He will walk out careful, lift a bird with 2 hands, thank it without words. He will return and set it down. And Nye will slide the drawing beside the real thing and say, "See, strong legs." And Diep will nod with that small smile that carries a whole answer inside it. The house won't be finished tomorrow, but some part of it is already built. It lives in the sound of rain and the smell of spice and the bold black legs that promise not to stumble when the night turns slippery. What do we owe each other when the storm insists on testing us? He doesn't say it out loud. He knows the answer anyway. Fire, patience. A cup of sweet water passed hand to hand, and a drawing moved to the center of the table so everyone can see the future coming closer. Wind pushes a new seam of rain through the doorway, and the fire protests with a hiss. He slides the door tight and checks the pot again. The scent has deepened, spice and patience. Nye inches her chair closer until her knees touch the table. She studies her chicken like an artist before a final line. A shadow moves on the path. "Listen," he says. Footsteps quicken through puddles. The latch lifts. Diep steps in, hair wet, shirt clinging, cheeks hot from the run, arms empty. She laughs once, breathless. "That rooster knows the roof better than me." Relief arrives in his shoulders. He didn't notice the waiting until it left. "We'll try after they sleep," he says. "Come warm up." She sheds her wet scarf over a chair back and joins them at the fire. She takes the cup from Noi, drinks, nods, hands it back. The three of them form a small triangle of steam and breath. He registers the steadiness that follows. It doesn't come from finishing anything. It comes from being in the same room again. "I wanted to bring victory. I brought myself instead." And Chai taps the drawing. "Ms. Diep, strong legs."
11 points. 11? Diep smiles, then plays by the rules of this new country. I vote 12. The upgrade sparks a new laugh from Ni. The moment is small, but something in it settles a larger thing. Diep leans into the fire, palms open. A drop forms at the roof seam above the table and swells until surface tension gives up. It falls on the paper's corner, darkening it to a deeper grey. All three watch. "No harm," Diep says, and moves the paper 2 steps left. "We don't stop eating." James hears his own logic in her mouth and feels a braid pull tight. Thought, word, act. The wind changes again. The door bumps. He jams a wedge under it and tests the hold. "We've got time," he says. "Coop will be quiet soon." "What's left?" she asks. He points with his chin.
"That last pile behind the stove, then we can prep." She stands without complaint. He tries to protest, then doesn't. They work side by side, the way bodies learn the room, the floorboards, each other's speed. She lifts wet cardboard. He fetches the broom. Nye frowns at her drawing and shades the belly a bit darker. The house hums in their movements. Simple, exact. Silence grows as work takes over. A clean silence, not the kind that hides a fight. When the corner clears, James rolls his shoulders and looks for the next right thing. That's the difference now, not plans on paper, the next right thing. "Okay," he says. "Let's try the coop." They step to the door as one. The yard breathes cool and clean after the heavy downpour. The air tastes like tin and green leaves. 3 sets of footsteps over wet wood. They move slow. Nye stays on the dry step, clutching the drawing with both hands like a flag. Diep nods to the left flank of the coop, James to the right. "Light here," he whispers. "Careful." Feathers rustle, a sleepy cluck. He reaches with 2 hands and feels the warm weight settle. The bird's heart taps fast against his fingers. He stills. The bird stills. He meets Diep's eyes in the dark and sees the question, and the answer finished the same shape. "Got it," he says. "Gentle," she says. They carry the coop's gift inside like a bowl brimming. The fire accepts its new purpose, steady and sure. The room fills with the first roast's promise. Rain softens to a curtain. They stand in that sound and prepare what must be prepared. Climax arrives without warning. The roof seam bursts. Water sheets down in a sudden flash, soaking the table, the chair, the floor. The drawing skates on a thin river toward the edge. "Grab it," Diep says. Nye lunges. Paper, almost gone. caught by small fingers. She holds it to her chest and looks up, eyes wide. For a heartbeat, no one moves. "Table," James says. They lift together. 2 steps left, another 2. The new patch of dry floor accepts the burden. He pulls the pot aside and wipes the table with the cleanest shirt left near at hand. His hand shakes once, then not again. "We adapt," he says. "We eat," Diep adds. Nye completes it. Together. Something breaks there and it isn't bad. It's the brittle edge that kept cracking in the same place. It goes quiet. The room resets around the new table position. The drawing returns to the center. A damp curl lifts at one corner and dries in the heat until it holds that shape like memory. He serves with both hands, simple roast, salt, a little sugar, the kind you taste and can't name because it belongs here. Diep closes her eyes at the first bite. She isn't performing, she is registering. Nye chews solemnly, then brightens. "We need beds tomorrow," Diep says when plates ease down. "And a wardrobe. I can bargain with a tiler." "You bargain," he says. "I'll lift." He watches her turn the map of tomorrow in her head and feels how it aligns with his. Not identical, aligned. He sees the kitchen partition rise already, hears the clink of tile on tile, smells new wood warmed by morning light. The future has weight now. He trusts it enough to put it on the table and let them all touch it. I was a CEO. I am learning to be useful. Outside, the rain quiets to a fine thread. The roof holds its breath. The leak slows to an occasional drop that misses the new table entirely. The room's temperature finds balance. Even the walls seem to have moved closer. "Tell me your score again," Diep says to Nye. 12, Nye says. She leans the picture against the cup so it stands and stares at them with its determined legs. Because it can run to us fast. Diep reaches out and presses her thumb lightly to the edge of the paper. A small grease print remains. A claim without drama. The talk turns to shelves, hooks, a curtain to catch dawn in the bedroom. They argue gently about where the bed should face. He gives in and likes the outcome better. She grins and notes the win without lifting it. Knee draws a second chicken beside the first, smaller, trailing, as if following a path. Later, he steps outside alone and listens. The village is a low murmur. Somewhere a television plays a game show. A dog shakes. Water runs thin across the yard. He looks back through the doorway and sees them. Diep wiping the table dry, Knee building a tiny fence of pencils to keep the paper from sliding again. That's the image he files away, not the leak, not the catch. This. What will we remember of tonight? He knows the way a wet room turned warm because hands were steady. The way a promise stayed a promise. The way a drawing with black legs stood in the middle like a small stubborn standard and kept its place. He returns to the table and takes the seat with the view he wants to memorize. One more piece, he says, offering the plate. They accept. The last of the steam lifts and disappears. What remains is simpler. Fires glow on wood. A thumbprint on paper. 3 breaths that sink without trying. The house is not finished. The home is underway. And when the next rain comes, they will move the table early and laugh at their own speed. Strong legs, stronger hands, enough for a path that keeps leading back here. Tonight's rain tried to scatter them, but it only taught a new rhythm. A table slid 2 steps. A picture with bold black legs stood in the center. Hands moved steady, one lifting the pot, one catching the paper, one pouring sweet water. Plans shifted, promises didn't. James learned that usefulness is another word for love. Diep turned a leak into a lesson. We don't stop eating. And Nee showed us why the legs were dark, so the chicken can run home fast. That's the heart of a house, not perfect walls, but people who move closer when the sky gets loud. If this quiet courage reached you, tap like and subscribe for the next chapter. And tell me in the comments which moment gripped you most, the court drawing, the table moving, or the first bite in a warm room.